Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
Damian Holbrook's life reads like a drama he might review as a senior writer for TV Guide magazine. But being a closeted gay guy going to a Catholic high school in Philly in the 80s as you cultivate an appetite for alcohol is probably something you can't make up. Forget about the part where he bottoms out at a high school reunion and then gets sober. Would you imagine his life took off after that? Time to talk over 25 years of sobriety with my main man, Damian Holbrook, one of the TV industry's loudest voices. But first, Kevin Souza.
Stand by the ocean floor.
Peter?
Yo.
Yo, how's it going?
You know, the last time I interviewed you, can you guess?
Oh, God, was it for the Oscars?
Yep, it was for the Oscars. I was living in Springfield, Massachusetts. I had a radio show. I'd just been sober maybe 1 or 2 years, and you were kind enough to come on and talk about the Oscars. It's probably like our 7th anniversary or something, 7th or 8th year. Yeah. I think that was in 2013.
Do you have now?
Well, I think I have over 9 years. Yeah. So let's start with you. So
Okay.
what is your sobriety date?
So, sobriety date is November 2nd, 1997.
What led to you getting sober? Was there any like meltdown or any like major event?
Oh, yeah, actually, it was. I'd gone to my 10-year class reunion, and I went with a friend of mine who was married to another friend of mine. She and I had gone to the same high schools, and I went into a blackout during the reunion, and I came out of it at a different location with a different group of people. And when I was told the next day what I had done in that blackout, and the things that I had said to my friend about her marriage and about her husband, it was all lies. Like, I lied through my teeth to this woman, but apparently convincing enough that she was just devastated by the shit I said. And that was when I realized. And she actually, when they confronted me, she's the one who said that if I didn't get help, I was going to die. And it was at that very moment.
This podcast is about breaking the stigma to a degree. It's also about just getting the message out there. And you were one of those people. Right. I talk about, before I got sober, I read the book Moments of Clarity, and for whatever reason, being able to reach out and touch some of that stuff. You know, Moments of Clarity is a book by Christopher Lawford Kennedy, for folks who don't know, and it's celebrities talking about their experience getting sober, and like Alec Baldwin was in there, Jamie Lee Curtis was in there. So, anyways, Fast forward to like I probably am a year sober, and I had Tina Fey's book, and I knew you, and I'm reading Tina Fey's book, and there's like 2 pages dedicated to you. Not only about being her friend, childhood friend, but then about working for TV Guide, and a story where you were a journalist and you quote unquote kind of burn her a little bit, and then
wait, by the way, that is not actually true, and I talked to her about that. She has her timeline wrong. Everything I had on her was on tape, and I could tell her exactly when she said it. That section of the book was that, and it's weird because she had actually talked to me about a bunch of things about the book. And that had never come up. But I did tell her afterwards, I was like, actually, this was all on the record. So, so I didn't really burn her. It makes me look like I'm a skeezy, but... Regardless,
you could tell she adored you. Yeah. I think a lot of people that are, when you're in early sobriety or early recovery, and you just see something like that, me seeing you out there being referenced by somebody like Tina Fey, and me knowing that you were sober and really worked a program, that was like one of those breakthrough like fist pumps. Like, okay, so that's a roundabout way of telling you thank you for doing this, and thank you for all the stuff you've done. You've always been pretty open about your recovery.
Yes. I try to adhere to the clear traditions of the program that I work to not like associate myself with a specific organization or speak on behalf of anything. But I am sober and I'm very open about my recovery. Yes.
So when did you first ever get loaded?
Oh, first ever get loaded. All right. I would place it within the first, the 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas of 1985. Yeah, 85. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was the last of my friends to drink in high school because I had been convinced that you couldn't drink because, Students Against Drunk Driving and Mothers Against Drunk Driving and everybody against drunk driving, and then I drank. We were decorating my best friend's family's Christmas tree, and they had a bar in the basement, which was basically like this finished basement where we watched all of our horror movies, and we hung out, and her parents, her dad made me a Manhattan.
Oh, her dad made it.
Yes, they were having drinks, and they asked me if I wanted one. Because we were safe and in their house, and this was the 80s, so there was no, the world was not as litigious as it is now. So he made me a Manhattan, and I loved it. It tasted weird and almost medicinal, but I drank it like a shot instead of like a cocktail. So he poured me another one, and that's when I got wrecked.
And you were a sophomore, which is kind of the time where in high school people start to drink around that age, where it's just kind of like it's the way it is in my experience. Did you notice that, like, you started to drink kind of
back then, yeah, it was like freshman year, there were like mixers at my high school and football games and after parties and things like that where people did drink, and I was so impressed upon by the media at the time to not drink. And also I was raised in a non-drinking family. Nobody in my family was sober. They just didn't drink. So it was one of those things that it was forbidden, and I wanted to be, a good boy. And then I started to see all of my friends falling into new social groups, and they were all partying.
Did you have alcoholism in your family at all that you know of?
I did. Apparently we were warned about that as we entered high school age, my brothers and I. I don't remember being told, but apparently on both sides, my father is from what I like to refer to as Dog Patch, Georgia, and his family is good old rednecks who drink themselves to death. And my mother's family is here from Philadelphia, and her father and her sister, and there was like uncles that always seemed to be happy at every wedding and house party, but turns out they really loved their drink.
So you said somebody warned you. Who warned you? Do you remember a warning, or did you forget it?
My parents.
Okay.
Parents.
Okay.
Because when I went to my parents and told them that I was getting sober, my father said, he had like, do you think you have a problem? And I said, yeah, definitely. He's like, we tried to tell you guys about this, when you were in high school, like you had to be careful about this stuff. And then they reminded me, I was like, wow, I may have been drunk when you told me that.
Yeah, it was a little too late, possibly.
Yeah. It was the train had already left the station by then. And honestly, I don't think a warning would have done any good anyway.
Yeah, I'm a tenant of the same philosophy.
Yeah, the disease was waiting for me. It would have found me either way. It would have, and I'm grateful in a way that it found me through alcohol, because I don't think I would have survived the life of a drug addict. The way I drank, I would have overdosed immediately.
How did your drinking progress when you start as a sophomore in high school? How does it go from there?
So it went from, I was going to an all-boys Catholic high school, and at the time I was a closeted fat gay kid. So my drinking progressed almost instantly because as soon as I started drinking, I felt a lot different. A lot of that like self-loathing was gone. The fear of being found out, the fear of being made fun of, because again, this is the 80s. AIDS is rampant, and anyone who's even remotely gay is a threat to mankind. I was abused mercilessly in high school. It's funny because like back then it was like you were teased, and when you can look at it back with sober eyes and hindsight, it's like, no, that was absolute full on abuse and bullying and negligence on the part of the school to protect me. So my drinking immediately became this thing that I sought out because it made me feel so different. It made me feel so much better. It made me feel more than I thought I was. And it was an escape. It completely changed the way my mind worked. It completely changed the way I socialized. I was suddenly cool and funny and social. And that worked for me because I needed to reinvent myself, and alcohol allowed me to do that.
Did you, the people who teased you, were they your quote unquote friends, or were they people who you didn't know, like almost like bullies, or were they friends?
Right.
Were they friends who just use like language that we look at now and we're like, dude, you know?
No. So that's the weird thing. So like my friends, because again I was closeted, my friends just ignored all the name calling when it was all the bullies and people that didn't matter to me as I was walking down the hallway or going to events or even on senior retreat. Like, this is a Catholic school, it's supposed to be like God-centric and just the amount. So my friends just turned a blind eye to that. They never defended me because obviously you don't want to put yourself in the line of fire. So I did have friends, and that's what I came to accept as what a relationship was people who ignored you when you needed them.
How quickly does the abuse ramp up?
So there was still that battle to be like the good kid. I was like an older boy, and I was, student class leadership and all this stuff. So I didn't want to get too much in trouble. Like if you got busted, that was like in 1986, 87, that was the end of the world. So my drinking, I restrained it to weekends. Like I was a weekend warrior, but I looked forward to it so much that it's all I wanted to do. By Wednesday, it was like, what are we doing this weekend? Where are we drinking? Which park are we going to? Who's getting it? Whose brother is old enough to get us stuff? Who's got the car? So there was already, by that point, it was making decisions for me.
Yeah, and I have the same experience where, and looking back as an alcoholic, the moment I drank, every move following that was predicated on the next drink. Like on a Wednesday, on a Wednesday, you're finding relief in planning for Friday or Saturday.
Exactly, right. And then it was like that panic of like, there are no plans this weekend. What are we going to do? Yeah. And the winter was the worst because, we couldn't go do it outside because it's the East Coast and it's, cold and rainy and snowy. So it was, and again, like this was the insanity of it was like we would drive around drinking from a case of beer, like openly driving around drinking. It was insane.
Everybody against alcohol, everybody against drunk driving. And the moment you start to drink, your moral compass flips.
Oh, gone. Like everyone had lied. Like Nancy Reagan was saying, just say no. I'm like, she clearly has not had enough. Why on earth would you say no to this, Nancy?
When you mentioned that, everything against drunk driving, the Nancy Reagan, that was so prominent.
Oh yeah.
But if you're like me or like you mentioned with your family in the morning, like nothing is going to stop that train. Once, I feel like it's a disease and I'm programmed to be alcoholic. And the moment I drank,
it literally, like they talk about it, like I started to give away pieces of myself, my integrity, my morality, my acceptance of right and wrong. Those all started going away to the service of drinking. And because at that time it wasn't hurting anyone and it was benefiting me, it was all fine.
Anything bad happened to you in high school?
No. In fact, that I think the sheer amount of things I got away with or escaped culpability for kept me drinking longer, I think. I did not get in trouble. I was out drinking with a group of friends one night on a golf course, and I went back to one of the cars to get more beer when my friends down on the golf course got raided. So I just got in the car and drove away with the lights off.
And you got away?
Yeah, got away. At the senior prom, because I was on the prom committee, I knew that the cars were being checked in the parking lot at a specific time during the evening. And then realized that we had been pre-gaming and left some stuff in the car. So armed with the knowledge of when they were going to go out to it, I just went out earlier as part of the prom committee to make sure everything was on point, and got rid of the stuff that would have incriminated us.
So you were very busy, by the way, like on the prom committee. I'm getting the idea that you're very involved socially. You've always been successful, right? You've always been
I was
driven.
a very late bloomer. So I was a late bloomer as far as life in high school, because I was so closeted and so afraid of things. But once I started drinking and stopped trying to kill myself, I was then able to put on this armor forged in alcohol to really kind of become very social, because I became known as like the party boy and the guy who was, willing to say the stuff that nobody else would say because he was drunk and he could get away with it.
You hear people say, drinking was the answer. It certainly sounds like it was like that for you at an early age.
Oh, yeah. It was the answer, and it was the remedy to all the problems I had.
Was it easier for you to express your sexuality once you started to drinking, or was it easier to suppress it?
It's funny. I was recently thinking about that because I didn't come out until I was 26, even after college. But when I was drunk, I could behave gay, and people thought it was funny because it was like almost like I was imitating gay,
Yeah.
So they just thought like, oh, he's really funny. He acts like that.
So you go to college. You're drinking. Would you call it? I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Would you call it like living a lie?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
Totally living a lie, because here I am trying to pass myself off as like the model son and the model student. And high school was easy. Once I got to college, that became a lot harder, because that's when I started drinking daily on campus. I went to Temple University. I was drinking daily. I was working at the school newspaper. I was adding a lot of dry goods to the mix. And then it was really hard to keep that balance of the good guy, because I was always hungover. I was always missing things. I was always kind of like MIA from appointments. And I always had to have an excuse.
The people that don't know dry goods, we're talking about drugs, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. So that's when I started to like kind of bail on relationships, screw over friends, get very careless with people's emotions and belongings, started to steal a lot, started to lie a lot. College was definitely the lawless years. And
you're still moving forward though professionally, like because I mentioned you were busy in high school, and now you've achieved a lot of success as a journalist, and so you're already writing. I take it in college.
So I got to college, right? Went to school for journalism, and immediately got onto the school newspaper. Started to kind of just build my resume. Was working as a film critic and doing TV reviews and interviews and things like that. So
where are you doing the stuff for the newspaper locally, or anywhere else?
For the school newspaper, and then for the South Philly Review, which was a newspaper right outside of Philadelphia, or part of Philadelphia. And so was doing all this and also working full time managing a video store and taking full course load. So, and it's funny, I was just talking about this with a friend about the amount. It is staggering how much alcoholics can get done in the grips of a disease. The fact that, like on top of school and 2 jobs and writing, I was also managing all the lies, all the twisted relationships, all of the, obligations that I could fulfill. Like, it was 2 full-time jobs of being an alcoholic and being a human.
Do you think that you did that to kind of mask, like, hey, like, look, I can't be an alcoholic. Look how busy I am.
Oh, yes. So there was a point when I was just finishing college. I was working at a video store. And
what was the name of the video store, by the way? I got to ask.
It was a Blockbuster video.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. And a young woman that I worked with and went to school with expressed her concerns about my drinking to some customers of the video store, who one of them was a doctor. And he took me aside and he asked me, and, was very friendly with them because they would come in regularly. And he took me aside and he asked me what I would come to find out were the 20 questions that a lot of like rehabs and programs will ask alcoholics. He asked me these 20 questions about, did I, seek out lower companions when I was drinking? Did I ever lose track of time? Did I, all these things? And all of my answers were yes, but. It was like, yes, but if I'm drinking alone, it's just because I'm waiting to go meet up with people. Or yes, yes, I would hang out with people that I felt were kind of scummy, but those were the people that really had fun with me, and afterwards he said, he's like, Damian, if you were a patient of mine, I would probably diagnose you as a functioning alcoholic. And all I heard was functioning. And I was like, right, exactly. I was like, I'm still doing well in school. I've got the job. Like, I'm doing, like, right. Like, this is kind of the best of both worlds.
Did you figure at that point, this is something that I'm just going to do for the rest of my life?
It was actually something that I planned to do for the rest of my life. Like, it wasn't, at that point, I still wasn't kind of seeing the bad side of it. There was panic attacks, there were bad relationships, but like I was just chalking them up to being in your early 20s. Like that's what everyone goes through. I saw Melrose Place.
Yeah.
And then, and then it wasn't until I got hired to the job I still have, which is amazing, with TV Guide magazine. And I was 3 years into the job, and by that point, that's when I realized that this is probably going to be something I'm stuck with for the rest of my life. I remember specifically looking in the mirror of this shithole apartment of mine and thinking, okay, well, my brothers will have the happy life, and I will be stuck with this one.
And then you don't see any way out of it. Like a Blockbuster, it's a blast, and you look forward to it, and now. Right. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck with this.
Right.
In a couple of years.
Like, I've started a career. Right. I've started a career. A career that I love, and I was putting at risk daily. And yeah, within 3 years, and probably only within like a year and a half, where bad things started to happen to people around me. Again, like one of those things where maybe I was born under a lucky sign, but like a good friend of mine had a terrible car accident in a blackout, had to be cut out of the car. It was upside down. He had taken out a telephone pole. It was terrifying. And that scared me sober for about 3 days. A boss who had taken me out for a promotion got a DUI after dropping me off after a night of drinking. So there were like these
close calls.
Right, all these close calls. Like I was with these people an hour before calamity, and I started to think eventually my number might come up. But again, nothing was stopping me.
Were you drinking at all before? Because with Blockbuster, I thought about this. Were you drinking at all before work?
Not before work. I was drinking at work. Yeah, I had this weird rule that I wouldn't drink in the AM. So that meant like 5 o'clock and beyond.
How would you drink at work? Like a Blockbuster? How would you pull that off?
So Blockbuster was open till midnight, and with closing the store, you wouldn't get out of there sometimes until after 1 a.m. and bars here in Pennsylvania closed at 2. So I was like, well, I'm not going to get to really enjoy time at the bar, so I need to kind of do it here. So I would have, I had some customers who came in who I would give free rentals if they brought a six-pack.
Yeah, it sounds like a plan.
Yeah, and then you get 3 or 4 customers doing that. Then you're getting a free case a night for them to get like a free copy, a free rental of Terminator 2. And, I would just keep it in the office or the break room in the refrigerator. And, it was a bunch of young people. So there were there were a few of us that drank on the job.
Did you feel like when you were writing, did you drink at all when you were writing? And if you did you feel like the old stories like Hemingway, did you feel like it made you a better
Oh,
writer?
right. Oh, so that was that big narrative that I had sold myself. And meanwhile, like, I was not doing any writing like Hemingway. I was literally writing, listings for Baywatch and, cooking shows. But then I started to handle bigger shows, and I was drinking, and I would take, back then, we would get scripts from TV shows to read and then write up little articles about it, whatever. And I would take a stack of these scripts, and I would go to this bar by my apartment, and I'd get hammered while reading these scripts. And as the night would progress, the notes that I would take on the shows would get more and more absurd and then just illegible. The next day, I wouldn't even understand some of them. So I would have actual physical proof of like, okay, this was clearly this episode I read during my first couple drinks. And then this one was definitely in the bag.
Looking back, do you see like shame connected to that? Like reading the next day, like, oh man, I was messed up.
No, because I would just reread it and do it again, like fix, like repair my damage before anyone knew about it. So it was still like I was running this long con on myself.
Yeah.
The shame didn't really settle in until after I got sober.
And so how did you get like as it progresses, because you're still kicking ass on paper, which is great. I used to love to do that. Like because I would have these jobs, right, which people were like, oh, he's doing okay. But like you got close enough to me and I was going to burn you. Did you have,
oh yeah.
So were people pushing you to stop drinking, people who got close enough to you?
Yes. I had friends who were constantly saying, you need help, you're an alcoholic. And so those friends I pushed away. Those were friends that I needed to disconnect from. And those were also, this was happening at that point in your life where they were like getting married and buying houses and having kids. So they were distracted enough that I was able to use that against them and be like, you've abandoned me. I'm going to go hang out with this new group of friends who let me drink as much as I wanted to.
Where's the sexuality at this point?
So I'm at this point, I guess, like I'm at 26 years old. I'm living with two friends, and I don't know what inspired it. There wasn't like anything. I just thought like I was just kind of tired of it. So I just like, we need to take care of this. And I just started coming out to people, and like 98% of them knew.
Yeah.
Like they were all like, thank God, like, and some of them were even like, now you'll be so much happier now because I'd gotten so miserable and toxic from alcoholism that they're assuming that all of that misery and anger and aggression and rage that I'm carrying around and expressing is because I'm closeted.
Did you convince yourself of that?
No, I actually didn't think I was that bad.
Okay, but that's what I mean. Like, did you? Okay, yeah. So were you like, yeah, like that makes sense. Like you're right.
Right. I was like, oh, this will be a new beginning. Like this will kind of be a blank slate. And they were like, maybe you'll stop drinking so much. Like you're not hiding so much. And I only had a couple friends who were like, really? Are you sure? Don't you want to have kids? I'm like, okay, well, first of all, those are not mutually exclusive. And also no, because I'm incredibly selfish and children are messy. And then I was like, oh, this, like, why aren't I getting happier? Like, I should have been so relieved. I didn't have the experience you hear. Like, I'm not Colton Underwood, where I come out and I get my own freaking TV show. I came out and just kept drinking as much as I wanted to.
So you're 26.
I didn't get it. My gay guide was just a bartender at the gay bar down in Philly. I didn't get Gus Kenworthy.
So you come out at 26. How like, what is the drinking like up until you get sober? Because you think that this is going to be a clean slate and this is like a landmark deal.
It is like rocket fuel to my drinking. At this point, it's like, I think I used it for like, I'm celebrating. My genuine self. Like, well before people were saying living your best life, I was using it as an excuse to like live my best life. I was drinking a ton more openly, doing a lot more drugs, associated, like, because now it's like I'm going to a gay bar every night, and that, like, let me tell you, if you've never drank in a gay bar, you
I
do
have.
not know what you're missing because
Yeah.
okay, I don't know what kind of alcohol they use, but it's always like 100 proof more than normal alcohol. Like those drinks are designed to get you on the dance floor and then on your back, I think. So we would go to these bars and just get ripped. And then it's like a 24-hour cycle, of drink, like waking up still drunk, going into work still drunk, drinking at lunch, drinking after work, drinking back at the apartment or back at another bar. And that is the last 2 years of my drinking. I couldn't tell you that, like, I would love to say that there were like sober weekends. Like there were times where maybe we went undercover, we call it, and not drink, but that wouldn't even last 24 hours.
How was your health?
Horrible. I was like 310 pounds. I was chain smoking. I was putting everything possible into my body at this point. I think I got more self-destructive and more self-loathing after I came out because nothing got better.
Oh, wow.
Like I felt like I didn't even come out right. And so I'm crying every day. My mental health is a wreck. I'm having mini breakdowns at the drop of a hat. I'm suicidal again. I'm writing a suicide note every day on this laptop. I'm so miserable. And again, crying every day. And I eventually couldn't hold it together. And I was at work and I went into my boss's office. And this was somebody I drank with. And I was like, I think I'm having an actual breakdown. I think I'm on the verge of a psychotic break because I can't breathe. My vision is getting blurry. I'm panicking. I'm sweating. I'm freezing. All that. And she was like, again, it was one of those things where, because I was doing so well, it was, like, you're taking everything too seriously. You need to calm down. You're doing great. You've got everything like you've got the world in your hands. You've got all this potential, blah, blah, blah. She's like, let's just call it a day and let's go get a couple drinks and ease this, soften these edges. And that's how I treated it, was just throw more drinks on it.
By the way, real quick, I want to just go back. So you said suicidal again. Before you drank, you had some.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you had some bouts.
In high school, yeah.
Yeah, because of the sexuality stuff and just like feeling boxed
and
in.
the abuse, like the bullying, the bullying and the sexual, it's just.
And
it was horrible.
And so the drinking is the answer for so long, and now here it is again. It's turned on you.
Exactly. And that's like the ultimate slap in the face. Like the thing that saved me from wanting to kill myself eventually made me want to kill myself.
And how long from that conversation, which I'm sure is just kind of like a good flashpoint, but that conversation you have with your boss till you get sober?
Probably 6 months.
And so that reunion, that high school reunion, is 6 months after that.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was probably the spring of '97, and then my reunion was Halloween weekend of '97.
And so you crash and burns. Take me through, November 1st of 1997. Like, what is that like?
Yeah. So I wake up on the couch. I had this big green couch. I woke up on that, and I was so sick, and so like. I felt like my organs were shutting down, like everything inside hurt, like just moving hurt. My head was already in a state, like a perpetual state of headache. I was taking Tylenol hand over fist, but I woke up and I felt depleted, like physically and emotionally depleted. I just didn't know what I could do, so I just lay on the couch all day long. And then my friend Dean, who was married to my friend Ann, who I'd gone to the reunion with, he called me and he said that we needed to discuss my behavior at the reunion. And now I'm thinking, good, because I went to that reunion with Ann, your wife, and she was nowhere to be found when I came out of my blackout at another bar. Like, I don't know where she went, thinking like she ditched me. And then now remember, this is the late 90s, so people are on their landlines. So she's upstairs on one line and he's on the downstairs line, and they start telling me the shit I said to her about, pristine and their marriage and fidelity and all this crap, and none of it is true. Not like whatever I have said to her is not true. Like they have an incredible marriage,
Yeah.
and I'm apparently just sitting there making up tons of lies, and clearly with the intention of just hurting her. And I don't know why, because she's a friend of mine, and she's never done anything to hurt me. So they go on and tell me all this stuff, and they say how abusive I was to other people at the event, and then I fled the party apparently and got in a car with all these other people and went to this other bar.
This is a reunion, by the way, so it's like people you haven't seen in a while.
Oh, it's like some of these people I have not seen in 10 years.
Yeah.
And after they finished telling me all this stuff, I remember saying to them that I had been apologizing for my behavior to people for at least half a decade at this point. And I said, I can't even muster up an apology this time because I don't remember doing any of this stuff. None of this sounds even remotely familiar to me. But it definitely sounds like something I'm capable of. And that's when my friend Ann said, if you do not get help, you're going to die. And she knew it because she had family in recovery. She saw all the signs.
I was about to ask you, so who was your lifeline in recovery? Who did you call? Who picked you up? Who talked to you?
So she says that to me, and I immediately know she's right. And I have no option. There's no game plan in place. Like, my identity is drinking. But there was a guy that I worked with who drank, I would say, back then, it would be he was far worse than me because he would be the guy that, passed out in public. He'd be the guy who would, lose his verbal skills. He was the mess. And I at least, maintained a certain, level of decorum. But he got sober about 6 months before this all happened. And he had gone to rehab after work and this program, this after work program. And he had stopped partying with us and stopped associating with us because he had to. He had broken up with this girl that we were, friends with, and he was putting his life together, and he looked good. He was showing up to work. He wasn't throwing up at work anymore, which is something that a lot of us did, which was so horrible. He looked good. He'd lost weight. He looked healthier. And I knew that he had gone and gotten help. And I remember thinking oh, thank God, he really needed it.
Yeah.
Of course, the worst drunk in the room is going to be oh, you need help. So I reached out to him, and I had never talked to him about his recovery. I had never congratulated him on anything. Kind of just cut him off because what do you do when someone stops drinking and that's all you do?
Yeah.
You cut them off. So I reached out to him, and he replied immediately that he would get back to me that night after he went to a meeting. And again, I know nothing about, I know that there are meetings, but we've never talked about that. He's never told me he goes to meetings or anything like that. So I'm whatever. And he called me that night, and I asked him point blank how he knew that he was an alcoholic. And he said that he was the last to find out. And he progressed to just tell me basically his version of what had happened and, what it was like now. And then, he's telling me all these things, and his story had absolutely nothing to do with my story. He was this straight, wealthy kid of divorce, athletic, all this stuff. And I'm I'm none of that. And, everything that he talked about, everything that he said made absolute sense to me. It all sounded normal to me. The sadness, the emptiness, the inability to control what happened when he started drinking, the willingness to get rid of healthy relationships in exchange for terrible, toxic relationships. All of that made sense to me. And when he finished, he said, "Do you think you're an alcoholic?" And I said, "I don't think I have any other option. All of the evidence that you've just presented to me is irrefutable. This is what I've got."
When you said that, did anything wash over your body?
Yeah.
Go ahead. And he what?
Oh my God. Yeah. So I got off the phone with him. He was he said, "Okay, just don't drink tonight. and I will get you information tomorrow. It's going to be okay. Just don't drink tonight. I have not had a drink. I got off the phone with him, and yeah, it's kind of like a ghost story as far as I'm concerned. Like, a lot of people do not have this experience, but I truly felt at that moment that this crazy obsession to pour alcohol into my system and blot out reality was alleviated. If only for that moment, I felt more relief and peace of mind than I had felt in probably 16 or 17 years.
When did you tell your parents?
I waited until I had 2 weeks because I didn't want to be the guy who oh, I'm quitting smoking, and then 24 hours later they're outside smoking. I didn't want to set anybody up for any more disappointment on my behalf. So I kept it quiet with my parents until I had 2 weeks, and then my friends until I had a month.
Dude, it's like you're already learning, because I know you, and I'm hearing the story, and we're talking about anything but a quiet guy. But you're already learning in sobriety, right? Yeah. Like, okay, here's how.
Yeah. It was one of those things. Like, the first thing I attached myself to was the anonymity. Like, this is nobody's business, except for mine. Nobody's, like, they didn't need to be a party to it. This was the shit that I had to take care of. I was so reliant on other people to fix my mistakes. I knew this one was the one I had to do on my own.
And what is those first 2 weeks like? What is that first month like? That first.
Oh my God, horrifying. I honestly feel like I walked around I don't think I blinked in the first 2 weeks because I was so shell-shocked by the fact that I was not drinking. I would wake up or go to bed kind of baffled and have to write down all of the things I had done to make sure that there wasn't a point where I just inadvertently drank because it was so second nature to me. I went to a meeting every day. I started to pray, which was weird because I was Catholic and I was an altar boy, but this was a totally different kind of praying. I started smoking a lot. I was chain smoking Marlboro Lights, and I was going through probably a bag of low-fat Oreos every 2 nights.
Whatever gets you there.
And whatever got me there. And then after probably about 2 weeks, and I was meeting people all along, and I met a group of young people at my first couple meetings who kind of took me under their wing, and they kind of just started to harass me as far as come for coffee, come for more coffee, meet us for coffee here, a lot of coffee. And a lot of bookstores. Back then there was Barnes & Noble and Borders, and there were tons of bookstores with coffee shops in them, so we would go to those. And it was so awkward and uncomfortable and terrifying, but every day ended with me kind of baffled that I had not drank.
And how did the next morning feel?
Oh my God. I did not know that there was so much going on in the world before 9:30, 10 o'clock. I didn't know what to do with the extra time. I took a second job.
Aside from TV,
aside from my full-time job, I took a retail job near my apartment, partially to keep myself busy on weekends, and also to build up some money, because being an active alcoholic with a fondness for drugs is expensive, and I needed to dig myself out of a hole. And also, you go out to coffee 6 or 7 times a week. That also adds up.
Yeah. So what about work? Are you an outcast at work because you stopped drinking, or do people oh, thank gosh, or how did that work?
Yeah. So with the coworkers, that was I probably went 2 or 3 weeks before I said anything to them, and they were so relieved. I remember this one woman that I worked with that I really liked. Her name was Karen. She was actually harder to convince because she might have had somebody in her past, but she expressed she was very grateful and happy for me, but she pointed out I was very volatile when I drank, and that wouldn't go away overnight. Like her perception of me wouldn't go away overnight, and that was fair. But everyone else was, like, this is great. You've got this. They were really supportive.
How did you hang on to your job? I mean, you got a kick-ass job, and you didn't
Yeah.
lose it, and you kept it the whole time.
No, it was a weird kind of confluence of very bad luck on one person's part and very good luck on mine. Like, there were things going on that were, my drinking was, in tandem with some coworkers and some colleagues. So we were doing it a lot together. And some of those people that were doing it with us were, higher up the masthead. And so we were protected.
Okay.
And then when the house of cards started to fall apart, it falls apart from the top. And so they suffered. They came, like the boss who got the DUI, things like that. And then I was getting sober right at that moment. And so suddenly I was out of the line of fire again. So I was able to really, and again, because of the job that I loved and I was kind of good at, even in an altered state, I worked really hard to make sure that it didn't suffer.
And before we get go forward in your journey in recovery and sobriety, when you do a lot of stuff now where you're out and about with A-list celebrities, you're hosting panels, you're interviewing superstars. Were you out in the public when you were drinking and using before you got sober?
No. Oh my God, no. No, I didn't get to do any of that. And thank God. Thank God I was able to be sober for about 2 or 3 years before I even was put in like physical proximity to any celebrity. I was really just a writer, and I was doing phone interviews and things like that, but none of that stuff came until I was probably 3 or 4 years sober. And because again, like, you start to show up a little bit more and you start being able to take on more and be more reliable, and you've got a cleaner head. I started to make myself not indisposable, but like put myself at their disposal, like, use me, if you need this done, let me know. And so they started to get me media training and put me on local television, some satellite feed radio tours, things like that. And that proved to be something that they kind of liked me doing as well. And then the snowball effect of that led to these panels. And so I was probably sober, probably 10 years, 8 years maybe, before I did like my first live panel. And that was at New York Comic-Con.
How was that, in sobriety? Was there any fear that came with that, or was it a situation? Go ahead.
A little bit. There was a little bit of fear. I never really thought like, oh God, I wish I could like take a drink to ease the fear, because I knew that would render me incomprehensible on stage. And I need to be there for this cast, and I need to be there for the fans, and I need to do a good job. So really what sobriety had actually helped me do is you get used to kind of talking in public at meetings and things like that. So it actually helped me be more comfortable on stage in front of people, in front of a microphone, and a little more honest and loose, which is great, because then the cast and the actors feel that, and they feel a little bit more taken care of.
Isn't that amazing? And I think that goes for anybody. There's different degrees, right? You've always been an outgoing person and kind of an orator, but even somebody who's, just doesn't feel comfortable in a room full of people and talking, everybody gets a little better and a little more comfortable in that respect. I mean, forget about the fact that you just saved your life and you have a brand new one that's incredible, but it also does help as far as that's concerned.
Oh, it's incredible. Like, it's such, like, and people have asked, they're like, where did you learn to, handle yourself like that? How come you don't get scared? I'm like, like, if you've spoken to a room full of people who, used to live in tenements and have been shot and stabbed and robbed their own parents, when you speak to a room full of that, a room full of Supernatural fans, they're easy.
So as you start to really get sober, let's go back a year or two sober. What are you doing to make yourself feel better? Because one of the first things that I think that people really have trouble wrapping their mind around when they're even thinking about getting sober is, I'm never going to feel this way again. I need this feeling. How did you replace that feeling?
Just a lot of fellowshipping with people in, like in sobriety, forming relationships, doing things that I didn't really want to do, bowling a lot. And then, I made friends with some people who were sober longer than me, who were actually like really healthy friends to have. And they kind of helped me get a little bit more focused on my physical health, and joined Weight Watchers. And then I started going to the gym and started having results from that. And so that, like, in the first couple of years, it was a lot of just going out to coffee and bowling and movies and house parties with sober people. And then after a couple of years, starting to really take care of my physical sort.
How did you start dating again and stuff? Because, whether you're gay or straight or whatever you are, for me, that was one of the most difficult components of sobriety.
It's so hard, especially because, I remember reading very early on in my recovery that the gay community, there was this like crazy statistics of like 1 out of 3 have a substance abuse issue. I was like, awesome. I'm like, good. Our numbers are low as it is. And now I get to reduce it by 2/3. It was difficult because, first of all, there wasn't like Grindr back then. And I wanted to kind of date somebody sober, but then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start dating. And that was the biggest challenge, was just like putting myself out there and realizing the first date doesn't have to be you getting completely hammered and doing something that you regret the next morning. The first date can be coffee and a walk through the park or the art museum. So that was probably scarier than doing any of the celebrity stuff I've done. Just like, oh, do I have to go be my authentic self with a stranger? And they are like job interviews anyway.
I was talking to a new guy about dating, and he was, the guy's got everything going for him, but just like you or I or anybody else that's getting into sobriety, he was timid about going on dates. And he said, I'm thinking about starting a dating app. And I started to mess with him a little bit, just to play on words. I go, you're thinking about creating your own app? He looked at me dead in the eyes. He said, dude, I would rather create my own app than actually use one and go on a date right now. That's how nervous I am. Oh, my
God.
That's the feeling.
Yeah.
You get that nervous. And those are all the things. Dating is one of those things where I used to drink. Yeah. I used to drink every time before I did it.
Oh, yeah. And for straight people, primarily, like, it's easier because you're at least going to meetings. And if you want to date somebody in sobriety, you're kind of getting the insight on these people when they share about what they're going through. So, straight people can pick off somebody from the program. There's not that many gay people in the meetings that I go to, so it's not like I'm, even surrounded by them.
Did you find yourself being surrounded by just a higher quality of person? I mean, of course you did, but how did that change go as you continue to get sober? Because we talk about it, right? Lesser companions,
right.
Sort of places,
right.
but everything starts to improve.
That was those things where it was like, it was so superficial and so narcissistic on my part of like lower companions being like where they were from or what their job was or their background. And, I had even tried to have like fancy friends who were just morally bankrupt and cruel. And the people that I started to associate with in sobriety, they come from all walks. They say Yale to jail. I've yet to meet anyone from Yale, but like the quality of person, it's all that inside stuff. Like I didn't know that there were so many people that were capable of the kindnesses that I have seen in recovery. I didn't know that there was an entire community of people who are working to make themselves better, and the best way they can do that is to help make someone else better.
What has that been like for you? I mean, I'm talking to you now, you're taking me on a journey, and we're talking about a quantum leap, somebody who's suicidal before they drink, struggling with their sexuality. And now you're out and about, you're talking to me about doing esteemable things, experiencing the help that people have to give, helping people yourself. What is that? I mean, do you ever stop and think about that?
Constantly. There's so my mom passed away when I was 5 years sober, and that was the worst thing that I'd ever been through. And we were good. Like we were good when she passed away, because after 5 years of sobriety, I was kind of closer to the son she had always hoped I would be. But when I was a kid, I would always be told I was ingrate, like was an ingrate. Like everything I was given, everything that they did for me, like I never showed gratitude for it. And then in recovery, staying grateful is a key component to kind of a long-term happiness. So I've always tried to stay grateful in my recovering life. And so I'm constantly reflecting on the things I'm grateful for. And it's never things. It's always the people. I just like knowing somebody like you and watching somebody come in and have absolutely no clue as to what is going on or how this works. And to see what you're doing now and following a dream that, because so many people come in and they say they want to do something, like you just don't think they're going to follow through. That stick-to-itiveness matched with skill very rarely, collide. And you, like, not only has it done that with you, but like you took huge leaps of faith to leave your home area to do what you love. And I watch you and I see these clips that you post, and you're not only doing what you love, but clearly the people you're doing it with love you.
Thank you.
And again, like that's taking somebody who was a mess of a human, who did not have a great scorecard, and to see what you're doing now.
Okay, let's do everybody a favor. I'm going to stop you because I just thought of this. Okay, now, and a good example of recovery is, it took me 10 years to get 1 year. My sobriety date is November 7th, 2011. My first meeting was in October of 2002. You were there.
Wow. Was it Villanova?
No, it was at St. David's. And
St. David's, okay.
It was the meeting where you shared with me later that I was like putting my head down on a desk.
Oh my God, yes. Oh God, I love that meeting.
I remember you telling me like I had my head down on my desk. I was trying to like blow bubbles on the desk. I don't know what I was doing. And I came out of it eventually, but it just showed, I was as hopeless as you could get.
Yeah. And honestly, like people that saw you come in, they didn't have a lot of hope. Because, some people come in and you're like, oh, they might have fried their motherboard. I don't know if they're going to be able to follow this. And, but you did, because again, like 10 years to get a year, you kept showing up because you knew.
Yeah.
You knew, they're part of like, and that's something that, they talk about, once you get a taste of sobriety, that's what you need.
What do you do today to stay, because you're vigilant, man, and your career continues to take off. We're not making this a mutual admiration society, but everywhere I turn around, I see you. And I see you with celebrities. I see you interviewing people. Real quick, out of curiosity, have you ever been in a situation where you're interviewing somebody like Jennifer Lopez and you think to yourself, man, I can't believe I'm here?
Yep. It's usually, I can't believe they let me do this, and if they only knew. Like, I still think, like, I was interviewing Daniel Radcliffe, and I'd actually interviewed him a couple times, and one time he remembered me, and I was like, fucking Harry Potter remembers who I am, and if he only knew what trash I was. It's something that I always think of. I'm like, God, I cannot believe how lucky I am to still be alive.
How do you pay? How do you give back? I mean, because you're very involved, but as far as sobriety is concerned, and you mentioned the fellowship, what does the fellowship look like now? You're that guy that has been around for 25 plus.
Right. Well, that was something I never wanted to be, the guy who had a lot of time and wasn't around. Like I didn't want to get all the good stuff and then bail on recovery or people that need it. So I still attend meetings in this pandemic. I mean, there have been weeks where I've done 8 or 9 a week because it's so easy. You just hit a link. Doing a lot of like reach out and text and calls to guys in the program that are struggling or maybe just need to be reminded that they're okay. And I work with guys to help them maintain their sobriety. All the things that I was taught, all the things that were done for me, I just try to replicate.
What do you do when you're feeling like, Man, I'm having a rough day, or what do you when you're feeling edgy, because untreated alcoholism is there for all of
Yeah.
us, and it happens. How do you right that ship?
Well, sometimes I don't, and I just let it ride out, and like I get a little self-indulgent and allow myself a couple days of self-pity. Um, but I'm also at least conscious of letting somebody in my circle know that I'm in that state. Like like my sponsor or one of my sponsees, I'll say like, I'm not feeling great. I'm not in a great mood. I'm in a mood. It'll pass. And I fight, that temptation to like overeat or overshop or gossip or any of those other isms that I can act out on. And other times I will, if I know that I'm in a bad place and I'm feeling low or something, I will try to reach out to somebody else who's not feeling great, or just tell somebody this is where I am and let them try to help me.
How do you function? Because I mean, a part of your job and a part of your life. How do you function with people outside of sobriety? How has your life taken off as far as relationships with people who are outside of the program?
So that's something that there's this like kind of thinking in portions of the community that like people who aren't alcoholics can't understand what alcoholics go through and all this stuff. And I don't subscribe to that, because something that my mom did impart on me very early on and for a long time was like, alcoholics don't have the corner market on suffering. Every human being is fighting some sort of battle. Every human being has something going on. And that has changed the dynamic of all of my relationships with people who are not in recovery, because it has added like this depth of understanding and empathy where, I'm able to have conversations with friends that I have had for years, for like 20 years, that after 20 years was able to have conversations with them about how they're feeling, not what they're doing.
And those are the kind of relationships you have with people today, for the most part, right? I mean, and that's pretty unbelievable. Those are the people that end up in your life.
Exactly. And the people that stayed in my life, I can now kind of like repay them for putting up with all the crap I put them through by actually being there for them emotionally, for being there and being a good example for their kids, for showing them what like a loyal friend looks like. It's really, it's amazing. It's something that I don't think I ever realized would be something in my life that I would have. Like you form relationships with people in recovery that are very deep and very meaningful and very rooted in a common struggle and a common solution. But you can have those same kind of relationships with people outside of recovery, because again, like they're all going through something. So, a friend of mine who I know struggles with her weight, I can be very open with her about my struggles with that and how.
By the way, you mentioned you were 310 pounds. What are you like? Yeah. I mean, you've lost a lot of weight.
I have done the very alcoholic thing of losing a ton of weight and then putting it back on, and then losing some more and then putting it back on. And I don't even think that's an alcoholic thing. That's just a human thing.
Yeah.
I'm somewhere like in the lower 240s right now.
Yeah.
First time I tried all this, I got very alcoholic and lost like 118 pounds in like a year, and it was super unhealthy. And thank God I had people who worked really solid recovery programs who were like, you're doing something unhealthy, please stop that. And they, helped me find my way out of that behavior. So now it's just kind of a constant, it's not a battle, it's just a lifestyle.
Exactly. Yeah. And I noticed that for me, I'm constantly working on acceptance and comfort with my own skin, comfort where I am. And the needle continues to move. I mean, I am so far from a finished product. And I like what you said a lot too about, hey man, like I allow myself the self-pity. Like I don't go crazy, right? I let people know I have people in my circle who I connect with, but we got to take it easy on ourselves too. Like you said, the human race, period. Forget about just the alcoholic.
Yeah. There's no shame or crime in having a bad mood. Like I didn't get sober to only operate on one level. Like part of the human condition is being sad or depressed. And, like it came to a point in, a couple years ago where I realized that I maybe had a depressive side that was deeper than I realized that I was addressing. And I sought outside help for that. And that meant an immeasurable amount of good for me, because that's one of those things that, like, when you take away drinking, I think the tendency to abuse yourself is still there in various ways, to not take care of yourself. And over the course of sobriety, I've learned to take better care of myself, both inside and out.
Have you realized that self-esteem comes with that? I mean, for you, like,
Oh God. Oh yeah. And it's so funny. Like, I really wish schools had imparted on us a better description and idea of what self-esteem is, because it's not ego. It's acceptance. You know, it's not like I'm great. It's like I'm good. You know, like I'm not too bad.
what? And I can't keep you forever. Anything else?
I mean, it's I'm so grateful that it's becoming part of the conversation these days. You know, for a long time, and I still try. I'm kind of a purist as far as, like, if you're in a program that practices anonymity, practice that anonymity, and, you know, but don't be afraid of the stigma, and don't be afraid to share your stuff with people. So again, like, I don't align myself publicly with anything formal, but it's there, and obviously people can read, you know, in between the lines. But I'm super grateful that people like you, people that are putting this out there, are reminding more and more people that help is there. Like, you don't have to feel as bad as you feel for as long as you think. You know, like, this level of care and help and recovery it's there. You know, so the biggest, you know, it's kind of that stupid saying that they apply to, like, working out, is like 99% showing up and 1% sweat. You know, like, the biggest threat to alcoholics isn't alcohol. It's not asking for help.
You said it all. Hey, well, last thing. How do you cover the Oscars in a pandemic?
From the couch. In the same way that I attended movies during a pandemic. Like, it is going to be, I'm going to be so comfortable. I'll be live tweeting.
What's your Twitter handle, by the way, and your Instagram and all that stuff?
Both are the same. So Twitter and Instagram are at Damian Holbrook, Damian Holbrook, Holbrook. So yeah, I'll just be live tweeting the Oscars. The Oscars this year are, I mean, it's really just going to be an oddity to see how it goes. But for TV Guide, we're far more interested in, like, the SAG Awards and the Golden Globes and the Emmys, because that's the TV stuff. The movies, but again, like you see it, the movies are all on TV.
Yeah.
All these things were on Netflix or Hulu. So yeah, the Oscars. What I'm more interested in is how we're going to cover the red carpet.
And how are we?
I don't know. I don't know how they're. I mean, this is the thing. We're a couple weeks out, and we still haven't seen a physical plan as to what the Oscars will look like this year. I mean, they don't have a host. I'm like, well, they don't have a physical space, really, because these actors don't want to go live, and so it's just a whole mess. And hopefully, this is the last time we have to deal with it.
Best show on TV nobody's watching.
Best show on TV nobody's watching.
Our best show on TV people haven't watched yet. You told my brother Michael Kingdom, and I watched it, dude, and I swear,
oh my God,
it was so unbelievable.
Okay. So unbelievable. So Kingdom is on Netflix right now. It's leaving Netflix soon, so go watch it now. HBO Max just picked up Happy Endings, the old ABC series that ran for 3 seasons. One of the funniest shows I've ever watched. Mayor of Easttown premieres this weekend on HBO with Kate Winslet.
I saw that. Yeah, okay. I'm excited about that.
So good. So not what I thought it was going to be. And then for pure just entertainment and escapism, I would go with, okay, so I love Breeders on FX, which is just a British comedy with Martin Freeman about a couple with 3 kids or 2 kids. That is just, it's a slice of life, and it's hilarious. And
Mike is giving me the thumbs up. He likes Breeders.
Oh, yeah, Breeders is great. What We Do in the Shadows is amazing. I loved, and The Magicians, which is a show that I will always go back to. It was on FX for 5 seasons. It's on Netflix now. It is It is so good. It's kind of a mix of, it's basically like if Harry Potter was set at grad school, and it tackles everything from like trauma and child abuse and abandonment and mental illness, and like, but all wrapped up in the world of magic, and it's very cool. So that I would always pitch to people. If you're looking for something that has levels and will also make you laugh a lot, that.
Dude, I could hold you hostage. I love you. I appreciate you.
I love it.
I appreciate your time. Best actor that best actor we haven't heard of yet.
Jonathan Tucker. Again, another one. Jonathan Tucker, he's on NBC's Debris now, but he was on Kingdom, and then he was on the Black.
Oh, he's awesome. Yes.
He is probably one of the finest actors of his generation. He has never turned in a bad performance.
He was Jay on Kingdom.
He was Jay, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's tremendous. And he's on an NBC sci-fi series now called Debris. And the level of authenticity and just devotion he has is staggering. He's so watchable.
All right, we got to get out of here. Dude, I appreciate you so much. Thanks, Damian.
Dude, I love it. Thank you.
Thanks,
I will
man.
talk to you later. Please let me know the next time you come home.
I will. I will let you know.
Excellent, man. I will talk to you later.
All right, Damian. Thanks, man. Later.
All right. See ya.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.